Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and I'm pleased to have today my guest, Richard Harvey, the mayor of Nipigon. So welcome back, Richard. We were just talking about really the cleanup of the Nipigon Bay, and so this was one of your, election platforms back in 2006.
Yep.
We just learned that you've been, you've reached, one of your goals because now the bay is delisted. You've addressed those key issues.
The bay's not delisted yet. It has been recommended for
Okay.
delisting. So there's still a little technicality. We still have to have the official announcement and have it signed off.
So I want to explore with you a little bit about the dynamics in local government, in how the government works with other levels of government, with the community, to achieve the success you've had. So here's a big challenge.
It is.
That system's been polluted for years and years and years, and here you've somehow managed in times of austerity. I mean, you lost your industries. Then shortly after that is the 2008 meltdown, and the forest industry was all going for, with all these challenges, how could you then be successful to pull off, good works that not only Nipigon is faced with, but communities all around the Great Lakes and really all around Canada?
Well, the most important thing is working together. And I think that has been something that we've really, as a council in Nipigon, tried to bring in our relationships with others, is not the idea of we're competing against other communities or other levels of government, but rather we're working together and sitting down and really having those discussions and talking about what are our goals. And the other thing that you have to recognize is it takes time. Nothing in government happens quickly. And I know that when we get new councillors elected to council, that's the first thing we tell them is, listen, you come in with all sorts of plans and all sorts of things you want to do. I mean, I had that my first time when I was elected as mayor. The one item we were able to quickly take care of was building a new library. And that was something that we were able to address. But again, that was because of being able to there were funding opportunities that just happened to become available, and we took advantage of that.
Yep.
But you have to be out there. You have to, and we've recognized that we have to be having these conversations with all levels of government. You have to also be actively looking for funding opportunities. Because the reality is that a municipality on its own, especially for these big projects, you don't have the money that you need.
Yep.
And so you have to look at what are the funding opportunities and where does that fit? Sometimes people say, well, here's the project we need done, so we want you to give us this money for this project. Well, the description of what that funding is to be used for may not fit for this project, but it might fit over here on another project that you've already got budgeted for. So you might have to say, okay, we're going to apply for funding to do this project. We'll take our budgeted funding here to do the one that we can't fit in right now. So it's a lot of that and figuring out where we can get it. It's difficult sometimes because the reality is that in municipal government, I think it's probably one of the most important levels of government. It's the level of government where you're really dealing face to face with people all the time, because reality is when I go to the mall here in Thunder Bay, I mean, I walk through the mall and people are stopping me wanting to ask about things that are happening in Northwestern Ontario. And there's that aspect that's happening there. People are always on you, and yet at the same time we have the least amount of power. We've had, certainly over the last number of years, we've seen it happening here in Ontario, where the provincial government has been bringing in more and more legislation that is telling us exactly how we have to do everything. And you have to be creative. You have to look at how do we, you're not breaking rules, but you have to say, how can we creatively get things done? How can we work together? And other issues there's a lot of things that come up. Nipigon we lost our entire industrial base.
Yeah.
And I have a picture that was taken that we had on our website back in 2006 when I was first elected. And it was a picture of the main business area in town. You could have fired a cannonball down that street and not hit a thing. There was one car parked on the entire main street in town. Things looked dead around town. So we took the approach. We said, you know something? now's the time to start investing, to start being responsible with our funding, to start looking at how we can best use money, to be efficient in how we run our government, but also to redo things, because as people see investments going into the community, people get excited and they invest back in it.
Right.
And we've seen that, and I believe we've been able to transform that community. And I think throughout Northwestern Ontario, we're seeing that as we work together, because really, I always point out that I don't consider myself to represent Nipigon. I believe that, you know, we're here to represent the region. And any of the communities, if Thunder Bay is working on something and we can support them in some way, we want to make sure we're doing it, because when good things happen in Thunder Bay, it affects the region. Anywhere in the region, it affects the city. And all of this stuff, we have to view ourselves. I mean, really, if you consider the proximity of our communities, in a lot of places in any of the larger cities, we'd all be one city anyways. So let's work together. Let's make sure we're doing these things. But let's be efficient. Let's look for creative ways of doing things. Let's not just say this is how we've always done it. Let's try and be creative to find opportunities. And that's a lot of what we've had to do. And doing that when, like you said, it was difficult times for a lot of people. So we committed ourselves to having virtually no tax increases for the last number of years, but rather look at efficiency within government operations and how to be more efficient in what we're doing. So I can honestly say that over the last 8 years that we have not seen tax increases, but we've increased services. And people will look at me and say, Richard, how did you do that? How did you guys, and you know, to me, it's kudos to our staff. It's kudos to the people who work in our offices and that, because when you said, listen, this is what we have to do. And one of the things I always say is, understand, as you know, the town workers, your response, you give us the advice, make the suggestions, give us direction on what you think should happen, but we'll make the decisions as elected officials. So I'll take full responsibility. Mm-hmm. If we make a bad decision, I'm not going to blame any of my staff. If things go really well, I'll tell you about what a great job my staff have done. But ultimately, it's the elected officials who are responsible, and that frees up our staff to look at creative, innovative ways to provide more service for less money. And that's a lot of what we've been trying to do there. So and that's sort of, I think I've talked around this issue here, because it's hard to wrap your mind around how do you, being fiscally responsible, and we've brought in interesting ways of even things like our borrowing bylaws, where we've come up with interesting ways where we can actually, when we need to borrow money, we borrow money from our reserves now, and we pay interest back to the people of town.
So I'm gonna kind of wrap this up,
Yeah.
because we're running out of time. There's so many questions I still want to ask. We'll probably have to have you back maybe in the fall to really build on this. But what I'm hearing you say is that if you get everybody together working towards that goal, you're going to find all kinds of ways to be more successful.
Exactly.
And I got to compliment you. It sounds like you're doing just right that in Nipigon. If people want more information, how do they get in touch?
You can phone me. My telephone number is 887-4614, and I know it sounds strange.
We'll put that right on the screen.
Put it right on the screen. It sounds strange, and I get people who are trying to call the mayor, and they'll call the mayor, whether it's in my office or whether it's on my cell phone. They call and they go sort of like, oh, I was wanting to get your assistant, but no. I don't have an assistant.
There you go.
That's how we save money. So there, or if you want to email richard@btba.ca. That's,
we'll put that on the screen as well.
It's bythebayadventures.ca. It's one of my businesses. So
thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, I appreciate it.
And stay tuned for our show next week. We'll have Marion Endicott, an experienced advocate for injured and disabled workers, coming from Toronto. Thank you so much.